So let's start with we didn't get a chance to talk about Milton's Eve, Diane Kelsey Macaulay, and that's really material that goes back to really books 3 and 4 and so on. But also relevantly book 9, because it talks a lot about the fall. So, what were some insights you gleaned from Diane Kelsey Macaulay's chapter on Milton's Eve? What are some salient points that she makes? Do you agree or disagree?
I need to find it, but there was this one part that I liked where what is it? There was this one specific line. Sorry, I need to find stuff before I start talking.
That's fine.
That's my fault. I'm so sorry.
You're doing awesome.
First of all, I think she's amazing.
Amen.
Good, good. Okay, while she's looking,
Amen.
Elaborate, Martha Grace.
Well, first of all, she's a bit mind-boggling because she is so precise and it's so in-depth. I mean, just even the first couple of pages, she's just really ironing out, like where kind of the state of this wave of feminism is, which I felt was really helpful.
I know that since you lean toward feminist criticism, you might like her.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it a couple more times because.
And I thought you might like the Stella Rivard, even the Doctrine of Responsibility one.
Stella is amazing.
So, yeah. So good. What else? What other things? What are some high points? Did you find what you're looking for, Ashlyn?
Just about. I think it was like somewhere in the middle, but I think it was. I just like her perspective on Eve, and I think one of the reasons is because and her perspective on women, because I've heard like people disparage Eve quite often. Like I wrote it in one of my dailies, but there was this one day where I was reading about women in the Bible, and I just happened to be on Eve that day. And this couple came up to me and asked what I was reading, and I was talking to him about it, and I was telling him how I was reading about Eve, and they were like, "Oh, you shouldn't read about Eve. She's terrible, and she caused the fall, and da 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 da." And I was like, no, that's not like a good way to look at it, because I mean, yes, did she succumb to temptation? Yeah, but at the same time, like her and Adam's story of redemption is so beautiful, and I think that to set that aside and just focus on that fall itself and not actually look at the forgiveness and redemption that they experienced is a mistake, and it's missing like half the story. Does that make sense? Like it's missing the point.
Yeah, it doesn't cover it so much in Genesis, but certainly in Milton, really all of 10, 11, and 12 is about how they go from just about as low as you can get to being a role model for all right-thinking people. I think Milton would say for all Christians, right?
Yeah. And it seemed to me that she shared that viewpoint.
One thing I like about her is she basically says that there's all of this negative press that has been projected upon Eve all the way up to Milton's time, and that since Milton wrote Paradise Lost, critics project those same things upon Milton, that he holds these, and she goes through with systematic precision, as Martha Grace says, and strips away and shows that Milton is actually, I guess she doesn't say this, but really a radical feminist for his time.
Yeah.
And that the even terms like subordination, even terms like he for God, she for God and him, that these actually are praiseworthy of Eve and empowering of Eve, right? So that's just awesome. I really like that. What else? What else, Martha Grace, were you going to say about all that?
Well, I think it's on page 29 of Macaulay, but she's kind of going, she starts the paragraph by saying, in Paradise Lost, the only character who speaks of Eve's liabilities before the fall is Eve herself.
Good.
And then later she says, each prelapsarian scene, from her choice of love for Adam over self-love at the lake to her faithful attention to the garden as Satan approaches, reveals in Eve virtues directly opposed to the weaknesses usually cited.
Wonderful.
I mean, it's amazing.
I love the fact that when we first see Eve, and it says he forgot only, she forgot in him, and all that, she is brilliant in pointing out that we're seeing that through Satan's eyes.
Mhm.
And that that very and that it is clouded in terms like seams. And so we're not getting what Milton thinks to be the truth. We're getting what Satan thinks to be the truth in his fallen state. I mean, things like that, I'm going, whoa, 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 you're awesome. So I would say that Diane Kelsey Macaulay single-handedly changed the entire trajectory of Milton studies, because prior to her, everyone seemed to see Adam's misogyny after the fall, how he castigates Eve, as Milton's voice. And she shows through the divorce tracts, through Tetrachordon and so on, that he's actually opposed to all that. And that is just Adam's horrible sin pouring out. And that the other material is from Satan, right? And so it's just, I'm sorry, Robert, we have not let you speak. What did you see in all this?
Well, I never found her book. So I haven't read her book.
Oh, I thought you sent it to us.
Oh, are you talking about Eve and the Doctrine of Responsibility?
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about that. Yeah, I thought this was pretty good.
No. I thought you sent us the Diane Kelsey Macaulay book.
You sent
I
us
did too.
I printed it and read it from whoever sent it. I thought it was you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought
you
you sent that.
But
Oh,
it
sorry,
doesn't matter. It's
sorry,
okay.
Martha
It's okay.
Grace.
It's okay. Well, let's talk about Eve and the Doctrine of Responsibility. What did you think of that one, General?
I thought I've always come from the perspective that Adam and Eve were together when Satan approached. And so I've always thought of it as they were equally responsible and equally failed. And so, sorry, her perspective that that they're both sufficient to stand.
Good.
I thought was good. And that also talking about how, we think of, I'm sorry.
It's
That
okay.
hurt.
That happens to me all the time.
Do you have some
Robert.
water?
I am continually drinking hot tea because my voice betrays me all the time.
I thought it was good. Part of the hearing misogyny is that she's inferior, she's less intellectual, she's more passion and less reason. I thought it was very instructive to show where she shows that Adam was also more passionate and less reason than the angel, and that he was the one that was incomplete without her. So I just thought it was a good balance to a lot of the.
Along that lines, Diane Kelsey Macaulay reinforces what I teach But she also says something that I'd forgotten that she said, which I need to incorporate in my teaching. She points out that Adam represents reason and Eve represents passion, right? Or fancy. But she pointed out that that Renaissance hierarchy, that great chain of being, is articulated in a vertical position, but that a lot of times it's articulated in a circular position. That reason and passion and reason are, what was the term that she used? Each serves the other. That there's a sense in which they're co-dependent. I wouldn't say dependent on each other. And I really like that because she explains the idea of subordination. I mean, the son is subordinate to the father, so there's no, and so on. But I like that view of her, of Eve.
How
Okay.
can you have just pure reason and no passion, or pure passion and no reason?
Right. And critics have pointed out for a long time that Eve is just ridiculously smart. I mean, a college professor smart. She doesn't have knowledge. Neither of them do. They were born yesterday. But she has critical thinking skills that are just amazing. So her discussions of space and so on, even before Raphael comes, shows this incredible mind. And so I really like the way that Rivard and Diane Kalsamacaulay and others in that. Barbara Lewalski is another one. Barbara Lewalski is a superstar. How those three and others sort of redeemed Eve from preconceptions that critics and readers had wrongly cast upon her, and gave her feminist empowerment and dignity. Anyway, okay, well, let's talk very briefly about the Singer and the Song article. What it does is it takes a look at all four of the invocations to the Muse, those sections in 1 and 3, 7 and 9. And it does it in an interesting way that it takes them out of the poem and just makes it a poem in and of itself. And we are to see the Milton narrator as a character, a round character undergoing growth, and the Muse changing in her relationship to the character. But also they say it still also integrates into the poem. But let's see these just as, so what are some things that you got out of that notion, out of that article?
I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a part in here where it mentions like correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like a separation between the speaker and Milton.
Yes.
And that, because I've kind of read it as Milton is the speaker, but they've given a separation that the speaker isn't necessarily Milton.
Is
that right?
Yes, good. That's a great point. I wasn't going to mention it, but it's a pet peeve that I have. The reason that they do that, at least prior to William Kerrigan's The Prophetic Milton, which I think was 1974. Mm-hmm. The reason that they did that is they didn't want to get into the religiosity of Milton if he really were the speaker. If Milton really were the speaker, then he's really claiming divine inspiration.
Okay.
And that may mean he's, crazy as a bag of rattlesnakes. or it may mean, whatever.
Mhm.
And so most critics, at least prior to 1973, had a pretty strict separation that the Milton narrator was a character. Just like in the Iliad, the narrator is a character. Just like the Odyssey, the narrator is a character, and so on.
Well, that seems like it's ignoring a whole aspect of the poem and of
Well,
Milton's
I've
life. Do you know
argued-
what I mean?
I've argued somewhere, I don't know where, written or conference forum or something,
Mhm.
that they sure seem to have a lot in common.
Yeah.
They're both poets, they're both blind, they both have experienced some kind of political devastation so that they are isolated. They are both old. They're both hated by the nation of England. They just seem to have a lot in common. And so Kerrigan said, it's time we address that. And he came to a lot of wild and inconsistent and self-contradicting conclusions, but he did Milton Studies good by saying, let's deal with that.
Mhm.
And my own dissertation is kind of a response to him, but yeah, I that irritates me. And basically it's like, I want to talk about this. I don't want to deal with the whole, is the muse God and all that.
Yeah.
So great point. Great
Yeah.
point.
Sorry. It bothered me while I was reading it because I was like, that doesn't because I just disagree with it. And I was reading it and I was like, I can't get past it.
It seems nonsensical. It's almost like there's certain secular critics that can only take Milton seriously if he is not the speaker,
Mhm.
because he's nutsy. He's a weirdo about Christian kind of,
Yeah.
Great point. What else about their article?
Mhm. They talk about tonal progression a little bit.
Talked about, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that everyone is sort of shocked by when they read Paradise Lost, the opening lines, is the cocky arrogance of the narrator.
Mhm.
And they suggest that cocky arrogance of a guy gonna, basically saying, God, give me a little help. I'm gonna crush this, and I will justify the ways of God to man, and I will speak down to this generation, and so on. That over the course of the epic, every invocation, he is more humble. And by the end, he's completely submissive to the muse. And that she takes a bigger and bigger and more dominant role. Early on, he just needs a little help from her, right? By book 7, she's the governor. She's in command of the epic. And by the end, she is dictating to him. While he slumbers. And she'll say, Milton, okay, so tomorrow I want you to write. And then she tells him what to write, and he wakes up and dictates it. Now, a lot of people have had problems with that, but next month I'm publishing a new article. And I'm a guy that says never try to argue what's in the head of a writer. But I published an article trying to prove that Milton believed himself to be divinely inspired. And so it just so happens that the way he describes his inspiration in Paradise Lost is confirmed by the biographers who sat in the same room taking the dictation from him. And so since there's a one-to-one correlation, for example, it's early in the morning that he dictates. He can't write a line of poetry without the muse telling him what to write, and so on and so on. So I think it's pretty obvious, or I argue that there's a one-to-one correlation, but I think they do a great job showing the increased power of the muse, the increased humility of Milton as he's going through this process, and his compositional process. So I like that. Okay, the last article we should take a look at is the conclusion of C.S. Lewis. What did you think of that conclusion? He starts out by just coming at Milton.
Yeah, that
It made me
myself.
mad.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Martha Grace.
I really like C.S. Lewis and most of his writings. I haven't read all of them because it will take me a lifetime to read them all. But I don't know. The more we've looked at his critique, I think the less I agree with it.
Good for you.
And so, which I'm like, is that okay? Can I disagree with C.S. Lewis?
I know he has this power over us.
I
You know,
know.
we're like, you don't know my soul, Lewis, do you? You know. But what are some
yeah.
things you disagreed with?
Let me see. Where is it? Oh no, I've lost it.
Okay, someone else while she's looking, so pressure's not on her. Other responses to C.S. Lewis coming at Milton?
One of the ones that, because I kind of had the same thought as Martha Grace, I was a little shocked, honestly. And let's see, on this part he says, in the second place, Milton's presentation of God the Father has always been felt to be unsatisfactory. And I don't know, I thought it was interesting the way that God was portrayed in the story, and I didn't find it to be unsatisfactory myself.
Good.
Because for me, I thought it was more of like I kind of thought maybe like an Old Testament versus New Testament,
Good.
like kind of visualization. And so it was in a way a little bit more realistic.
Good.
To maybe different depictions of God, because he's not necessarily this, fuzzy guy all the time.
Good.
You know what I mean? I mean, look at Sodom and Gomorrah, and allowing Satan to get all up in Job's business, to put it mildly. He's not necessarily just this fuzzy guy, and so I don't know. I thought Milton's interpretation was really interesting, because he wasn't always this cold character. And again, I'm coming from a bias of Christian standpoint.
And so C.S. Lewis. I mean, that's what's confusing, right?
Yeah, it is confusing. I mean, again, it's all up to interpretation. But I don't know. I really disagree with that.
Keep in mind that C.S. Lewis, like every critic, you can understand what every critic is doing, and every paragraph of every critic, if you understand their critical perspective.
Mm-hmm. So
on that issue, I would just suggest to you that C.S. Lewis died before Stanley Fish could write Surprised by Sin. So he didn't understand why God has to come across initially as harsh and distant and cold, because that is us reacting to it with our sinful nature. And since he didn't understand that, and really no one did before Fish wrote, his only response was, well, since he didn't understand what Milton was doing, he failed Milton for the portrayal of God. Okay. He's a product of his time. Martha Grace, did you find what you were going to say?
I did. It's actually on the first page where he talks about what he thinks about Milton's last two books, which I think you said this in your lecture, that a lot of people don't think the last two books are that important, which they may not be. I mean, they're extremely extra biblical, but I don't know. I'm undecided about how I feel specifically, but literally in the first paragraph, Milton just kind of rips it apart. As in, like, he says it is a grave structural flaw, and that he compares like Milton to Virgil about telling a short story about the remote past, which wishes our minds to be carried to the later results of the story, but he does it even less skillfully than Virgil. And I think even if the last two may not be obviously quite as impactful as, you know, those middle chapters where we talk about the fall and we get into the more complex nature of Adam and Eve, I think they still depict kind of this beautiful ending of the story of like, yep, they fell, they sinned, they messed up. But, and it talks about this in the Bible, like this is the part where God sews together, like they sew together these fig leaves and they become covered and then they're sent out. Like, I think it's just a nice little bow on the package. But I will say, I did agree with one part. He talks about on 150 or on 135 about this book being compared to the Great Wall of China and that the comparison are good. Both are
I
among
like that. I love that analogy.
I know.
Mhm.
I think it's great because he says the wall is necessarily hated by those who see it from the wrong side, and the parallel is complete. So just kind of depending on which side you on, you're either on the side that's really, really ugly and awful and like exclusive, or you're on the other side that's very protective and inclusive.
I love it in that vein when he says that many of those who say they dislike Milton's God only mean they dislike God. You know,
That too. Yeah.
and that's analogous to what you're saying. Two other things that I'm going to put in the same bucket as what you were pointing out, his dislike of books 11 and 12. Let's put that in the same bucket with his dislike of Milton's portrayal of God. And let's put that in the same bucket of his saying that Dante is not only a greater poet than Milton, but greater in spirituality than Milton. Let's put all those in one bucket. Now, let me tell you the aspect of C.S. Lewis that I think causes him to arrive at all three of those conclusions. He was an Anglican. He was Episcopalian. And as an Episcopalian, he's going to have a much closer affinity with Dante, who's a Catholic, than he is with Milton, who's a Puritan. He's not going to like books 11 and 12 because they are the most Puritan books of Paradise Lost. They are not written in a complex, lofty manner because they're for Puritans. In the same way, Paradise Regained is written as a Puritan epic, so simple. And Lewis doesn't like that. He says it's written horribly. Adam and Eve must experience reading the Bible in order to become people who can walk in grace in this world, because that is a Puritan concept. That it is only through reading of the Bible that you can orient yourself to the worldview of God. And Lewis doesn't understand that because it's not an Anglican concept, really. It's much more Puritan than it is. So really, his criticisms of Milton are he's not Anglican enough. And once you understand that, you go, okay, he's can only talk from his glasses. So I said at the beginning that it's all about what glasses you wear as a critic. And once you understand the exact tone, the color, the texture of those lenses, then you can predict what they're going to say. So insofar as Milton is Christian, he supports Milton. Insofar as he is Puritan, notice at one point he says he has really flawed theology. He means his Puritan theology. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So once you understand that he's in his little slot saying exactly what you'd think he'd say from his little slot, all of a sudden you're like, okay, Lewis, you be Lewis. I disagree with you, but you be Lewis.
That
Does
makes more sense. Yeah.
Does that make sense? What are you going to say, Robert?
I think that what I appreciated about books 11 and 12 is it's kind of a theme we mentioned early on about the universe being so big, and that Adam and Eve even understood that, you know, it's a huge universe outside the world. And Adam and Eve are made in the image of God. They see God in each other, and they learn about God somewhat from each other. And in the last two books, we start seeing the ways of God with that thousands and millions of people.
Good.
And if it was just Adam and Eve trying to figure out what's going on, it would be a very impoverished view. But seeing the whole thing of God's people and the flood and the, you know, giants and sons of God and daughters of men, and all that just enriches their understanding of not just creation, but of God and how he deals with his creation and how he's dealing with them. And that it's not just a God clicking his, clicking his fingers and the sun comes and fixes everything. It is a long involved cast of millions solution, and that magnifies not just their sense of their own failure, their own falling, but magnifies the greatness of the one who is paying the price and redeeming them.
Good. So the phrase that I keep hitting on in my lectures is that patience and heroic martyrdom. That Adam and Eve have to bear with the effects, the horrible effects of the fall in faith through patience and heroic martyrdom. They could kill themselves. They could disobey because they get to see the providential scheme of how paradise is regained through the Son and through their actions and the actions of their children. Well, one of them, right? One of the three, and so on. And they learn basically the Christian concept of sanctification, that we've all fallen, we can't get up, that we are redeemed, but we are being redeemed, that we are, my analogy always is that if you get bitten by a snake, a rattlesnake, they rush you to the hospital, they give you an anti-venom, and you are saved. Now you're going to go through 3 days of hell while you are being saved. Right? And so Adam and Eve see the redemption in their lives. They're walking in grace by the end. But it's in this world, and they will see the ultimate grace. Now, I mentioned that Thomas Elwood, the Quaker assistant to Milton, when he read Paradise Lost, said, well, you've written a lot about Paradise Lost, but nothing about Paradise Restored. And if I were Milton, I would have slapped him with a wet fish. Because even in the opening lines, till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat. Right? And at the
Fish.
what? A Stanley fish. Exactly, a wet Stanley fish. So that was a good one. So the other thing that I like about Book 11, 12, and I don't remember what I said in my lecture, but I like the notion of typology. Did I mention that in the lecture? That it is a prefigurement of one better that's coming. And so one way, and it says in there, shadowy types to truth. It talks about typology. So one thing you could do is you could read books 11 and 12 and every incident and see how it prefigures Christ and the redemption. Sometimes he hits you over the head with it when it talks about Noah and his sacrifice and bringing in all things new through destruction, right? But Joshua, he says, whom the Gentiles Jesus call, because Joshua and Jeshua is the same name. So Jesus' name is really Joshua. And so on, all the way up. And not just to Jesus, but beyond. So Paradise Lost and the Bible both basically have in the beginning and even forever, amen. Not just all of human history, but before human history and beyond it, right? And Paradise Lost does exactly the same. It has that same, what some critics call encyclopedic epic grandeur, that it is encyclopedic as an epic in the sense that it includes everything. And I think that's what Lewis is pointing to when he mentions the Great Wall of China. Well, we only have about 10 minutes left for our course because I'm doing the worship service in Wales at 2:00 because they did my sermon this last Sunday. I have a friend in Wales who's ill, and so I do about a sermon a month for Wales, and they do it on a Sunday, and then the following Wednesday, I lead their Wednesday night service. So I've done about 9 of these, I think, or 10 in the last 9 months, or last 7 months. But is there anything that we haven't covered about Paradise Lost, or the criticism, or books 11 and 12, or ideas you're thinking? Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
This is off topic. First is, you mentioned you're about to publish an article.
Yeah.
Where would that be?
You know, weirdly, I did this conference, an international boutique conference. It's one of these, I never had tried to go to one before, but it's basically super elite. They only let about 40 scholars come. And instead of having 10 things or 100 things going on, everyone's in the same room seeing what everyone else does. And only 3 Americans came. And the other one was from Harvard, and the other one was from, I don't know. Anyway, UCO was not, you wouldn't put him with it. But there were scholars from all over the world. And I did my little shtick, and they seemed to like it. And so later they said, we want to try to publish it in a Canadian journal. And so I just got the proofs, or the last version last week. And weirdly, the abstract, I've never seen this before, it's translated in English, but it's also in French. So this is the first time I've been translated. And I assume the French says something like, this ignorant pig dog knows nothing, poo-poo on his face. I don't know French, so I assume. But yeah, it's a Canadian journal. and I can't even remember the name of it. It's something like French. But it's in English, I guess. I wish I could think of the name of it.
I was just wondering how we get our hands on it at some.
Well, if you want the article, I don't know why you'd want it. I can send it to you because I had to do it on Word before I sent it to them. There's no need to read it. I mean, it doesn't rank up there with, C.S. Lewis and the Scholar of Art and so on. But if you're curious, you can read it.
Yes, please.
And I'll send you the bit they sent me, which has the French part. I don't know what that means. It's called Vita Tractiva.
That's a fun name for a journal. Vita
Yeah,
Tractiva.
Vita Tractiva. Living La Vida Tractiva is what it's called. And I don't know anything about the journal. Yeah.
My second thing is could you rescind that release that you wanted us to sign?
Oh, yes. I think that, I may be wrong, but I think that is in your D2L. Is it in the D2L, Martha Grace?
I have been deficient in accessing D2L apparently.
Okay, I can send that to you, or maybe Martha Grace or somebody can copy and paste it. By the way, Robert, thank you so much for making all these articles available.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you,
thank you.
Robert.
That's
You're a
normally
lifesaver.
what I do, but I just couldn't this time for weird series of circumstances.
I'll send it to you, Robert.
Thank you, Martha Grace, because I'm recording every one of these, and I want anyone, like my friend Chris Schoenfeld, you may not know him, but he is just a beast with all things Milton, and he watches these videos. And I can't let him see yours unless I get your approval. Is there anything else that we haven't covered?
I also have a slightly off-topic question.
Go.
So I just want to make sure that we can still like bug you during your office hours
Absolutely.
to ask about stuff. Okay, good.
My time is your time. I don't know if you know this. I have one daughter, my oldest daughter, who in 2020 did a little cancer dance with colon cancer. And so they're still doing, she's fine. She's great. But they're doing, these post tests, these battery tests. And so I've been taking care of my granddaughters a lot. And then my youngest daughter, Dia, who Robert knows so well, she has had COVID since April. She's a long hauler.
Since April?
Since April. And I don't think things are much better than they have been since about June. And my wife has been itching to go there and give her aid and comfort, but we have been hunkered down here because I have a lot of comorbidities. But we are free to go as of Tuesday.
Yay!
And we are cheating, and we're leaving Saturday. So we're hoping in those 3 days we don't contract COVID. But I'm staying down there a week, and I'm going to be doing all my teaching from a hotel in Atlanta. But I'm hoping to do all my office hours and anytime. And I believe the office hours are there clickable on your D2L.
Yes.
So please, usually I got nothing. I spent 3 hours today. I had one student, and I read my Diane Kelsey Macaulay. So, I'd love to have you all, especially talk about your papers. That would be great.
Good, because I'm sure I have questions, but I just can't think of them at the moment.
And I'm sure I have answers, but I'm sure they're bad ones.
No, they're good answers.
Inappropriate.
You sell yourself too short.
I am not my biggest fan, I'll admit. Anything else about Paradise Lost? I don't know about your experience, but I thought this was awesome. And I am so grateful for the three of you. I consider you close friends as well as students. I know I'm not supposed to. I know there's supposed to be some distance there. Screw that. You guys are awesome. And I have so enjoyed doing this. I know I didn't get paid for it in money, but I got paid in a lot of other ways. And I'm just grateful for you three. Thank you.
We're grateful for you too. This was a super fun experience. This was really, really fun.
I know it was arduous because we crammed it so tight, but I did that so that as your other courses are heating up, you don't really have this one except for the paper.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that that help was helpful.
It has been. It really is. It's
If
been
I can-
super fun.
If I can help you in any way, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all. Well, maybe not Robert, but I will see you all on April 7th.
All right. We
And
will see you
Robert,
then.
God bless you, sir, for coming and jumping on again. As
My
you've
pleasure.
done so many times. I love you all. Thank you. Milton loves you.
Thank you.
Bye.